right now. So good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
We've got just a few minutes, and I want to talk to you about something that happens in all of our lives every day, and that's the chance to be emotional about things. We can be emotional about things in a good way, but we can also be emotional about things in a bad way. We can also do some silly things when we're emotional, like buy a new car that we don't need just because we get new car fever. So we want to talk about how those kind of things affect us a little bit. The Bible verse that I want to square away with you today is Proverbs 29:11, but it basically is referring to emotions, and it basically says when a fool utters all that's on his mind. So in other words, as soon as it's on his heart, no filter, he puts it out there. But a wise man keeps it in until afterwards. So in other words, as you know, when something is said or done to them, they process it before they actually begin to speak. So it gives them time to make conscious decisions about what they're going to say and how they're going to react. And so we want to be wise. We don't want to be fools. We don't want to just utter whatever comes to our mind. That generally causes problems. I'm sure many of you have tried that experiment in the past, and it probably does not work out for you very well long term. And so it happens at home and it happens at work. So that's what we want to talk about. So I say here, emotional decisions and behavior generally have less desirable outcomes in the long run. I'm sure you go back and look in your life, and there are things when I wish I would have just not done anything or not said anything, and life would have been so much better. Or I could have said it a whole lot differently. And so here's a few drivers of our emotion that we just need to be aware of. And you guys already know this, but these are just reminders. But stress, obviously when stress starts creeping up on you, you begin to react differently than what you would normally do, or say things that you normally wouldn't say. At home, when stress kind of gets up in our house and the 16-year-old's got things stirred up and, you know, some other things are going on, it's easy to feel that stress creeping up in your house. And if you're not careful, it's not fun to be around that kind of stuff. So you have to manage it and say, whoa, hang on, let's do something different. Let's back up. Let's think about what's going on here. Let's all go to our rooms. We'll meet in about 10 minutes and we'll come back. So you have to do something there. But anger's another thing. You know, it fires us up, and our pride in us wants to push back and let people know where we are and who we are. But you know what? A lot of times that anger causes us to say things we really don't mean. Pride is another thing. It creeps up in us, and when it does, we say things that may belittle or push other people or make ourselves look better versus the way they look or the way they are. Or maybe we feel like we're more intelligent than they are, or we're more experienced than they are, and we push. You know, we throw that out there at them a little bit. But we should always be trying to lift people up. Lust is another one. Lust gets in, again, the new car fever. But it can also be other lust. You know, it can be lusting after things you shouldn't have or people you shouldn't have. Does that make sense to everybody? Another thing that drives us is jealousy, frustration. I'm going to burn through some of these. Just anxiety in general, pressure. You know, y'all get a month in and you're trying to collect. A little pressure going on, okay? Insecurity. That's another one. So there's a lot more, but I just wanted to just touch on a few of them that we just need to be aware of that will get our emotions up. At home life, I want to just make this point, is we protect our emotions a lot of times because we've made poor choices. And what I mean by that is we have made an emotional decision. We maybe even know it's not in our own best interest and it wasn't even the best decision, but we defend the decision because somebody's calling us out on it. It's very, very easy to do, but we have to be real careful with that. Here's the point that I want to make to you. When we make emotional decisions and we do things out of emotion, it erodes the equity that we have built into relationships that we have. It just undermines life. It's like a river running through, like the Grand Canyon. It just kind of erodes things. It's like a rip current on the beach. You know, it's just eroding the beach away and pulling against everything. So we have to be careful. We always are trying to build equity in our relationships at home, even our relationships at work. But when emotion drives things, it really does undermine what we're trying to do. So just wanted to point that out. It takes away, the other point that I want to make there, it takes away the we and focuses on the me. The emotions are all your own. And so you have to control those. If you don't and they control you, then it undermines other people. It doesn't bring you together. It really drives you apart. How many of you have been in situations where you've said something emotionally or you've done something emotionally, and you could almost immediately feel the wedge between you and a child, between you and a spouse, between you and a parent, between you and even a coworker. And you could just feel the wedge immediately. And then you've got to go through reconciliation. So much better to handle a little differently. Let's look at work life real quick. We'll talk about how home life erodes performance at work. I can't tell you over the years how many people I've seen that have tough situations at home that are just emotionally charged, and it makes them underperformers at work. Because when they get to work, their mind is distracted, they're talking to their friends, they're talking to coworkers about what's going on, and it really just begins to take the focus off of what's going on at work, when it should be on work. Does that make sense to everybody? How about this one? Let's look at this. Efficiency declines, which is what I was mentioning there. Concentration declines, and then attitude. If you bog down with emotional stuff at home, it's real hard to bring a smile and the right attitude at work. It tends to kind of go both ways. And when you're struggling emotionally at work, you go home, and guess what? It becomes the place where you dump on everybody, and it just wears and tears. So you have to kind of make sure that you're not making those emotional decisions. Here's a point that I want to make about emotion at work. If you're not careful when you're emotionally charged with things, you tend to do what works versus what's right. Anybody got any ideas about what I mean by that? You tend to do what works versus what's right. How about if a client calls you, and it's a client that's giving you a hard time about something, and they're probably maybe not being nice because they're a little emotionally charged on their end, but you allow yourself to get a little emotionally charged. So maybe the best product is not given to them, or the best price is not given to them, or the best level of service is not given to them, because you sort of take it personal and get charged up too. So it's real important to make sure that you always are doing what's right based on what you know to be right versus what you feel. I've had customers call me before and just really put a cursing on me. Nothing I did. It was just they didn't like what was going on. So and it was in their world. It wasn't even my world. I just happened to be a part of it. But you know what? I couldn't get fired up about that and pull the trigger back on them. Does that make sense? So it's real easy to do what works versus what's right. So make sure we're doing that. And here's the thing. I say here, if it's right if it works for me. We have to be careful about that. You got to be team players. You work for a company. You got to be looking out for the bottom line and what's in the best interest of everybody. But if you're not careful, if it just kind of works for me, you go that route, and it's really not in everybody's best interest. So just keep that in mind. I do want to point this out. A better home life does produce a better work life. When you've got it right at home and you come to work, it's a better place. You make it a better place. It all just kind of feeds together. All right, here we go. I'm running out of time here, so I'm going to jump on this real quick. The short-term fix is this: self-awareness, understanding you are an emotional creature. You are going to have emotions. They are going to be inflated and deflated and moved, and you have to understand that you will react to those emotions. So you've got to have some self-awareness to understand when that begins to happen and I start getting charged up about something, I need to do something about that. Here's the point. Recognize the rise of emotion in yourself and avoid immediate reaction. When you feel it coming, you know it's coming, just call for a timeout, back off. Just simply say, hey, look, you know what? My daughter had me fired up the other day, and I knew it was coming. I could just feel the blood pressure coming up like this. Y'all don't have that problem, do you? So anyway, it's coming up like this. Blood pressure's up a little bit, and I said, you know what? Let's talk about this tomorrow, because I don't really I don't have anything intelligent to say right now, because I didn't like what had happened. So point is back off. The next day, whole different scenario. I had time to pray about it. I had time to talk to my wife about it. I had time to digest. My 16-year-old cooled down a little bit. A lot better outcome the next day than what it would have been the previous day, because Daddy would have been ugly the previous day. All right, so here we go. We recognize that. Here's the long-term fix. We need to proactively manage our emotions. In other words, renew our mind. Understand that the world system is in place to cause your emotions to be pricked, or your emotions to be punched or kicked or fired up. Does that make sense? The world system's out there for that purpose. It's trying to trip you up and cause you to do things that aren't right. So you need to understand that it's working against you. The other thing is that you need to exercise self-control. Just got to do it. You got to control yourself. If you don't, your emotions will, and they will take you places you don't want to go. I promise. All right. Remember, you're turning a battleship. You can't just turn it off and make it happen. You've got to fight and push every single day to control and maintain and understand who you are and how you're going to function in terms of dealing with your emotions. And I put on here, it's like exercise to change. It's like muscle memory. You know, the more you exercise self-control and recognition of your emotions, the better you're going to handle them. It's like a baseball player playing baseball. They're typically better towards the end of the season than they are the first of the season because they're practicing every day. They're playing a lot. So the same thing with us. If you let your emotions go, your emotions are going to win. But if you're always controlling them, you're going to get better and better and better at controlling them. And remember, when you control your emotions, your life is going to be a better life. And that is all the time I have. How about this?